Sorry? Please go.
Honorable members, the Honorable Mr. President,
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, please rise to observe a minute of silence for prayer or meditation.
je vous remercie. Veuillons
Thank you very much. Please be seated.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, good morning.
asante sana, obrigado. Je salue la présence parmi
I would like to welcome the honorable members of the Bureau, men and women who work behind the scenes, interpreters and journalists. In accordance with the rules of procedure, I would like to request Mr. Jérôme Ringo, Executive Director of Zootechnique, to enter the chamber.
Jérôme Ringo,
Jérôme Ringo.
Monsieur le Secrétaire Général,
Mr. Clark, please read the first item on today's order paper.
The first item is administration of oath.
hein?
We have communication from the chair, then administration of oath. Communication from the chair.
L'ordre du jour appelle la prestation.
The item is the administration of oath. Mr. Clark, please call on the countries to take the oath.
Clac.
The Honorable President invites to the podium the following delegation from Algeria. Honorable Bourras Jamel. Honorable Osmani Lamin.
أقسم بالله العظيم
أقسم بالله العظيم أن أقوم بمهامي
I hereby swear solemnly declare that I, Jamal Bourras, will perform my functions as a member of the Pan-African Parliament to the best of my ability and with honor and dignity in the service of the peoples of Africa. I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the African Union and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitutive Act of the African Union and the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament as by law established. And I will promote adherence to the principles of good governance, democracy, human rights, international humanitarian law, peace, stability, and all the objectives of the Pan-African Parliament, so help me God.
Thank you, honorable members.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, as part of the relationship we have with the diaspora and the American Congress, I would like to give 5 minutes to Mr. Jérôme Ringo to introduce himself and deliver his message.
The Honorable His Majesty, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, and all of the esteemed representatives of the many countries of this great continent of Africa, to Parliament members, to representatives, ambassadors, and all esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jérôme Ringo. I am from the United States. This is my 63rd trip to Africa in the last 3 years. I travel extensively and very often to this continent because as an American, I recognize that there are many valuable resources here, but the greatest resource I have found is the people of this continent. While spending many years working in the U.S. Congress and with members of the Congressional Black Caucus, it is very, very clear to me that the strength of Africa in the United States Congress lies in a collective representation of the countries of Africa as one strong body and one strong foundation. I have recognized that, yes, many of your countries individually have sought the attention, the recognition, the cooperation of many businesses in America and in our Congress. But I also recognize that you are much stronger as you present yourself as a unified body, yes, individually, but with a foundation of strength, that of the Pan-African Parliament. And I want to encourage each representative of each country that I am here in support and to represent both the African Union Mission, Dr. and Honorable Chirambori, and of course the Pan-African Parliament, to do whatever I may do to strengthen the relationship, but also be a conduit to the eyes and ears of the United States Congress and businesses throughout the United States. I want to applaud you, for lately we have successfully, or are successfully, on an endeavor to get the American people to better understand Africa. There's a clear disconnect in America. Americans simply do not understand you. They do not understand the realities of the greatness of your heritage, of the power of this country, not just in its natural resources, but in its people. And so I have gone back to the United States to erase myths. Many myths that Americans think one way of Africa have been totally wrong, and it's time to right the wrong. And so I applaud the Pan-African Parliament and your esteemed president for his and your commitment to develop a spirit of understanding between America and Africa, and believe that as a result of that better understanding, we can achieve and experience both economic and social successes that can be beneficial to us all. The goal of America and the United States should not be to come into Africa just to make money. That should not be. That should be an effort to empower and to share both knowledge and technology and ideas and education and people so that we can make the world a stronger and better place for us all. I am here, and thanks to your esteemed president, hopefully we'll be here in the future to serve and to act as a liaison or representative to get the correct message to the U.S. Congress and to the American people so that they can act accordingly. I thank you for this opportunity to address you, and I'm very honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jerome. Now I would like to recognize Dr. Mayaki Asani, Executive Director of NEPAD.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki is not only the former Prime Minister of Niger, but you also know the heavy burden weighing on Africa in terms of the transformation and development of our continent. It is good for us to have a discussion, therefore, with NEPAD. He was part of our special guest yesterday, and I would like to thank him because he had the humility to come this morning to deliver his message. You have the floor, Doctor.
Your Excellency, Roger Kondo Dang, President of the Pan-African Excellencies, members of the Bureau, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament. Monsieur le Président,
Honorable President, I am here today in demonstration of our obligation as the development agency of the African Union to contribute in all ways possible to your work and following your guidelines and your instructions. Therefore, I would like to start by congratulating you most warmly for the significant contribution that you are making to further our regional integration process. Not only are you doing this on an intellectual level, but also through a series of processes, among some formal and well-known and other more informal. Now, these two types of accumulated processes enable your voice to be heard, and that this voice of Africa enables it to lay the foundations for its development. I would also like to point out your significant role in the regional integration process. We are all aware that Africa's participation in the global stage can only be guaranteed when Africa would be fully integrated, when Africa has regional markets, and when through and within these regional markets, Africa has developed its competitiveness. And if we do not achieve these goals, we will continue to be marginalized globally. And the fact that you represent a group waging this critical struggle for a regional integration is a demonstration of the key role that you have. It is also proof of the need to listen to the Parliament and follow your directions and firmly follow in your footsteps.
Is about NEPAD as a technical arm of the African Union. As you know, we have been integrated into the African Union structures and processes since 2010, and in that integration, the mandate which was given to us was to focus on implementing the strategic frameworks of the African Union. And as you know, we have 11 critical strategic frameworks, from infrastructure to climate change to tourism to energy to agriculture, and you name them. So what does implementation mean in the context of this technical arm of the African Union? It means taking the strategic frameworks which are continentally framed and translate them regionally at the regional economic communities level, SADC, ECOWAS, ECAS, UMA, EAC, and all our recognized regional economic communities, and from this regional entry point, reach the national level in order to make sure that national plans are coherent with regional strategies. If I take one example, which is the one related to skills and youth employment, in order to have the demographic dividend. We know that the African Union has designed specific strategies. These strategies are in the process of being translated regionally, and our aim is to make sure that the national plans regarding these issues are coherent with the regional strategies. We all know that harnessing the demographic dividend will need an industrialization strategy. We saw SADC, for example, launch its industrialization strategy, which is coherent with national plans of industrialization. Our aim is to see that model being replicated all over the continent. Industrialization does not mean attracting foreign direct investment. Yes, it can be, but it also means boosting the creation of small and medium enterprises. And we all know that small and medium enterprises will be the key instruments for the creation of employment for our youth. And we all know that creating jobs for the youth will be the fundamental challenge of every policy maker in the continent for the next 10 years. In this process, and this is my fourth point, in this process, the Pan-African Parliament will have to play a critical role, because you are the only space where contradictory opinions can lead to a consensual view, and you are the only place where it is possible to influence continentally, regionally, and nationally. We do not have within the African Union architecture any other place where this influence can be translated practically at the continental, regional, and national level. And lastly, honorable members, what I would like to offer is our services, because we are servants of what you would like us to do in all these processes, which can make sure that regional integration is not a theory, but is a practice. Once again, let me thank you and apologize for not being here yesterday, because I was within a context which couldn't allow me to be here yesterday. And let me thank you again for the considerable work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, CEO, for your spirit of cooperation. And you were not absent yesterday. You were resolving the matters of Africa, so that was why you were held up. And that's why I say we are very thankful this morning for you making yourself available to deliver this message. On behalf of the Bureau and all the members of Parliament, we would like to thank you. And we gladly accept the cooperation you're offering. We know that you're a key part of this Pan-African Parliament, and you contribute a lot in the functioning of the Pan-African Parliament. Once again, thank you very much, and given your commitments, if you have to leave, you can do so. Thank you.
L'ordre du jour, le prochain point écrit à l'ordre du
The next item on the order paper, Mr. Clark, please.
Presentation and debate on the activity report of the Pan-African Parliament.
Présentation et débat
Presentation and debate of the activity report of the Pan-African Parliament.
Your Excellency, Dr. Roger Kododang, distinguished guest, Mr. Jerome Dingo, honorable members of the Bureau, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. According to what was presented by the President, from now until the end of this morning, we will be listening to a summary of the activities of our Parliament. And afterwards, we will have a debate around the same document. Therefore, we have 33 colleagues that have a list of speakers. Our list of speakers is the following: Marie Mediatrice Isabeliza from Rwanda, Honest Butibili from Botswana, Fatou Jawara from the Gambia, Noe Mbonigaba from the Burundi, Ruamba Okia from Burkina Faso, Aljimbo from the Gambia, Seharla Abdullahi from Ethiopia, Nasu Katu from Togo, Alji Sankunjame from the Gambia, Ali Sanfo from Burkina Faso, Felisberto Alves Vieira from Cape Verde, Zalikato Diallo from Guinea-Conakry, Kuku Agbo from Togo, Mohamed Reza Utem from Mauritius, Mustafa Elgendi from Egypt, Chief Frarumbira from Zimbabwe, Sekou Traoré from Mali, Abdal Barka Brahim from Djibouti, Mamoipone Emily Sanowane from Lesotho, Gloriose Nimenia from Burundi, Aminata Niang from Mauritania, Eljad Diop Kanto from Guinea-Conakry, Sidia Jata from the Gambia, Professor Genga Letigo from Uganda, Charles Majakalir from South Sudan, Kaltoum Sulidem from Sudan, Tabo Suponea from Lesotho, Mohamed Laskri from Algeria, Salek Musa from Sahari, David Ernest Silindi from Tanzania, Nico Shivando from South Africa, Fidel Ruigamba from Rwanda, Sulaiman Sizai from Sierra Leone. Those whose names are not in the list can then add their names to the list. Now, respectfully, I would like to give the floor to the President of the Pan-African Parliament, Dr. Roger Nkodo-Dank. You have the floor, Excellency.
Excellence, Monsieur le Président.
Your Excellency, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Vice Presidents, Excellencies, Chairman of the Regional Caucuses, ladies and gentlemen, chairs of the standing committees, dear colleagues, once again, good morning to you. It is for me a great honor as part of this exercise to introduce to you the report of our proceedings during the intersession. This report covers the period from May 2017 to October or to September, and it sums up almost all the activities that have been carried out. As you have noted, this report brings some innovations because in the beginning you will note that there is an introduction and then we elaborate on the various activities that have been carried out, and then at the end of the report there are the resolutions and the results of the activities. This was based on a will which was several times expressed here, so that we do not only sum up the activities but also show the activities that have been reached during the period under issue. And I think that, taking into consideration the fact that the report was circulated to you and that you've been able to read it through and also carry out a profound analysis, I would like to overview the various parts of our report. There is an introduction which ushers the other parts of the documents. You have the development, the parliamentary activities which cover the meeting of ambassadors, the session, and also the issues that have emanated from these sessions. You have also the meetings of the committee, the taking of the oath, the cooperation of PAP with other partners, and also the parliamentary caucus of women. So as a summary, this is a report of all that has taken place during this period, and our mission to the United States and also the proceedings of the standing committees. I would like to say here, dear colleagues, that the report only reflects what comes from the committees, all the committees that have sent a contribution. This contribution is reflected in the activity report that has been circulated to you. I said it earlier, an activity report is a summarized report. It's not a detailed one. This is why we have tried to summarize as much as possible the large activities that you have carried out without overlooking the effort that you have made in your work. So the standing committees have worked, and we have summarized their work. And during the intercession as well, we have held two conferences, special conferences. The first one here at the seat of the parliament, and one outside. The first conference was that of the clerks of parliaments, and the purpose that was sought from this conference is to provide instruments to the clerks in the pursuit of the various issues that we examine here. And then there was the 8th annual conference of the speakers of national assemblies and senates of Africa, whose purpose was to engage the speakers and speakers of assemblies and presidents of senate to hasten and speed up the ratification of the protocol and also devote a full day in the national assemblies for this ratification. This objective was achieved since the speakers and the presidents of senates have undertaken to give a deadline for the ratification, that is the 31st of December 2017, for these ratification to be carried out. And also, the Association of the Clerks of Africa have undertaken also to pursue their efforts with their speakers and presidents in order to reach the 28 signatures. We have held also a conference in Yaoundé on the political and socio-economic integration of the continent. What is the role of the parliament? This conference was placed under the highest patronage of His Excellency Paul Biya, President of the Republic of Cameroon, and has witnessed the participation of the deputy chairperson of the commission and guests of honor. It was for me an occasion to thank the President of the Republic of Cameroon and other authorities which I believe have done their best in order for our proceedings to take place in very good conditions. And maybe there have been probably some shortcomings and omissions, and I would like you on their behalf to apologize if there have been any shortcomings. Under the period under consideration, one of the speakers of the assemblies of Africa was deceased, and I went to Burkina Faso, to this brotherly country, in order to present our condolences to the government of Burkina Faso and also to the family of the deceased, the late Diallo, who has paid a visit to us during the 7th conference of the Conference of Speakers and the Senates of Africa. The Pan-African Parliament also participated in the 29th session of the heads of state and government, which was held in Addis Ababa in January 2017, in July 2017, and has come back with a decision whose content is reflected in the report. The participation of PAP in the meetings of the organs of the African Union. I led personally a delegation which went to discuss administrative and political issues of the Parliament at the Commission of the African Union. That meeting was presided over by the Deputy Chairperson of the Commission. What the Union has allowed us to discover a great number of problems that we are faced with. And all this is due to the fact that the Parliament does not have a legal status at the African Union Commission. So we have fought in order for us to continue our actions, because on the administrative level, the Parliament was not recognized, and parliamentarians also are not recognized as being part of the African Union. And this is why every time we have some blames to express or some grievances to express. And we have also debated issues related to the staff. In conclusion, we have had an innovation which consists not only in carrying out this draft report, but also to show the resolutions and the results which we have come up with. And this is found in the last part of our report, which tries to summarize the resolutions and the results which we have achieved during the intersession. This is to tell you that our work here is not confined to hold sessions. The new dynamic that we want to set up here is that by the end of our work, all the decisions that we make, that we must try to bring this to national parliaments in conformity with the decision that we have made here in August, that as of now, each delegation will dedicate a whole day at their national parliaments to speak about our parliament in order for us to have a better visibility and also promote this chamber in their parliaments. I would like to come to the conclusion that all what we're doing here is neither the result of an individual or group of individuals, but the result of the collective effort and participation of all the participation. And when something goes wrong, we, as much as the president can be charged, you also share the responsibility in the failure. I would like to conclude by saying that up to now, I'm happy with the participation of the honorable parliamentarians, and that the Secretariat also is being provided with the necessary tools and instruments, and the clerk is new, together also with the deputy clerk, and we are trying to build up a new administration. If you ever note that there are some delays, then I would like you to show some indulgence in order for us to continue to work for the interest of Africa. Africa needs us, and we must mark our name, write down our name in the history of the continent. I think that the efforts that we are deploying here go in the same direction. Long live to the Pan-African Parliament, long live to the African Union, long live Africa, and thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente.
Thank you, Chairperson, Mr. President, for your reports on this House. Before I give the floor, I would like to advise that I have received 20 more applications for speakers, which I will name: Namibia Sibedi, Mali, Ashmin de Sudan, Corneille Pardonou de Benin, Monchi Raoud, Tunisia, Tekel Tessema Baramo, Ethiopia, Jantun Traore, Guinea-Conakry, Cynthia Mamle Morrison, Ghana, Sid Hamed Mugueya, Mauritania, Ibrahim Hassan, Niger, Mohamed Mubarak Muntaka, Ghana, Dongon Kone, Côte d'Ivoire, Jamila Sissi Debik, Tunisia, Algir Darbu, de Gambia, Noranou Achad, Benin, Aurélien Simplice Kongbelet Zingas, Central African Republic, Said Brahim Said, Sawari Republic, Haidara Shata Sisse Mali, Chem Shinyamu Shimonteguende, Zimbabwe, Claude D.M. Kamanda, Sierra Leone, Janet Kabila, Democratic Republic of Congo. These are the colleagues that have applied. Having said this, I now give the floor to Marie Mediatrice of Rwanda. You have the floor.
I thank you, Mr. Vice President, for giving me the floor. I would like, first of all, to extend my thanks, to the team of the Bureau that is being led by His Excellency the President for the important activities that have been carried out during this period. I would like also to thank the General Secretariat, which has provided us with a well-elaborated report. Mr. President, I would like also to congratulate the team for the efforts that have been made in opening new horizons for PAP and partnership with other parliamentarians of other continents, and also the capacity building of PAP and of the staff. But I have only one question, Mr. President. During the period of the May session, many members have requested to mention in your report the activities which were also envisaged during that period. Have these activities been carried out or not? I have well read the report, but I haven't seen the activities that were due to take place during that period to see whether these activities have been carried out or not. Thank you.
Honestly, Botswana have the word. I don't think he's in the house. I now give the floor to the Honorable Fatou Jawara, the Gambia.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As we just received this report this morning, I cannot be able to have a lot of saying, but going by the activity report, I just want to add my voice to the previous speaker. Mr. President, PAP mission to US to advocate the removal of sanctions on Sudan was a very good move. We really commend you on that. Mr. President, the AU 2016 team on harnesses the democratic dividend through investment in youth. Mr. President, I think now PAP should move from commitment to action. Let's put all hands in glove with our other African countries. Mr. President, it's high time for us to know that what affects the youth of the Gambia affects the youth of Sierra Leone. Mr. President, extreme situation requires extreme measures. We should start asking ourselves why the unemployment rate of our youths, why the illegal migration, among others. Thank you.
I now give the floor to Honorable Noé Mudigaba from Burundi.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the floor. I would like to greet and commend the brilliant achievements of the Pan-African Parliament as presented here to us, and I would like to take the floor on cooperation of the Pan-African Parliament with international partners. And I would like to seize this opportunity in order to underscore the importance for PAP to support Burundi against the sanctions that have been imposed on my country by the European Union, and particularly in terms of funding, so that these sanctions be lifted, these retaliation measures reinforce poverty, and I would like to seize this occasion in order to make my appeal. Thank you.
I now invite Honorable Ruamba Workia from Burkina Faso.
I thank you. I would like also to add my voice to the previous speakers in order to congratulate the president of PAP and also the Bureau of PAP and the various committees of the PAP and all the parliamentarians for the various activities that have been carried out and which have added more dynamics to this airport, to this parliament, and also have allowed us to mobilize more resources to carry out missions in order to sort out the problems in the various countries which are members of our parliament. I would like also to express my satisfaction about the new impulse that has been provided to the new administration in order to revitalize it, in order for us parliamentarians to work through documents and our interventions here in the parliament. To conclude, I would like very sincerely to thank the President of the Parliament and all the parliamentarians and the administration of the PAP for the support that has been provided to us during the decease of our late speaker. Thank you.
I now give the floor to Honorable Halaji Mbo from the Gambia.
I want to thank you, Mr. President, for this comprehensive report on the activities of PAP for the past few months. I also want to thank my honorable colleagues for the warm welcome they've accorded to us as new members of PAP. And as young parliamentarians, I would like to say thank you to my honorable colleagues. I must also say thank you to the Bureau for all the services they've rendered to us, just to ensure that our work actually is much easier. Now, coming to the report, my intervention basically is around the timely submission of this report, because if you really want to go deeply into the various activities of the Bureau, I think it is important that we get these reports on time. If we get it on time, we're able to go through it properly and also to have constructive criticism just to ensure that we can do better in the future. Now, also I would have loved to see the issues that the Bureau actually has encountered during the course of this, this period. For example, the issues that we encountered during the year and the ways and means by which we can actually resolve them in the future. Among those, probably they would actually help us to be in a better position to also improve upon the PAP activities in the future. Now, I would also employ the IT department, for example, to also assist in the communication of PAP. For example, we live in an ICT world nowadays, and I think it is important for them to be able to generate emails for all of us, actually, where PAP, the Bureau, will be able to communicate with PAP members at any time. Now, all of us, we use Yahoo, some use email, some use Outlook, some use Yahoo, Gmail, etc., etc. But if PAP is able to generate emails, for example, for each member, the communication actually will be easier and the communication also will be faster. Now, I would also like to urge my fellow colleagues to assist in the ratification of the PAP protocol, because this actually has been very, very, very slow. And again, we are talking about less than 10 countries who actually have ratified this protocol. And I would suggest for the PAP to come up with plans by which we can assist member states to be able to ratify these protocols as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the Honorable Siharla Abdullahi, Ethiopia.
Não vejo na sala.
Seems like she's not in the floor. I now give the floor to colleague Nasu Katou of Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
I thank you, Mr. President. I would like also to thank the Bureau of the PAP for the report that has been presented to us earlier. The previous speaker has raised one of the issues which I had to speak about, that is the ratification of the Protocol of Malabo. I'm taking the floor on this protocol. Yesterday, Madame Sylvia Mazebo from Zambia has told us that there were only 5 ratifications to date. In the activity report, it was said that the issue was entrusted to the regional caucuses. It is worrying because it is just as if it wasn't a priority anymore. The parliamentarians would have wished that in each activity report that we present a situation of all countries and their position when it comes to ratification. I see the enthusiasm through which the President has touched upon this issue with all the necessary parliamentary diplomacy. And earlier, the President told us that the speakers of the national assemblies have given the deadline of 31st of December 2017. There are only 2 months, remaining. And are the countries going to sign by this deadline? I would have wished that we should think of a new strategy after 27 in order for this protocol to be adopted, because we know that without this protocol, our parliament won't have any raison d'être. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now call upon the Honorable Algis Jameh of the Gambia.
Thank you, Vice Chairperson, or Vice President, for giving me the floor. First of all, I thank the presenter for presenting this updated report. Anyway, I'm very much happy when I went through, though it was given to us in a very short time, but then with the little time that I had, I was able to go through some parts and then see where I can come in. On page 27, where from the heading training, staff and MPs, there is a portion that stated that the second visit was also a 3-day study tour scheduled from the 22nd to the 24th May 2017. Then this team, according to the report, one delegate was not within the group due to a reason best known to the officials who stopped the person of going where he should go. And I don't know whether further investigations was done to find out why. Because, I mean, a delegate from PAP to somewhere and was stopped. And the reason why he was stopped not to proceed is not put in the report. This is something that I am in doubt of. So I would want to know why this individual is stopped, because we have to stop these kind of things. It is embarrassing. A delegate from such a high-class society is stopped of what? So I would be very happy if this will be cleared out so that we'll know whenever we are going out for such issues, we'll know what to do or how to go and what not to make us not to be given chances to go out. Okay, the report is very fine and I have no objection to it, except that if we all try to put our hands on deck to see to it that whatever is written in this report is being implemented fully to the best of our ability. Because as Africans, and as the code says, one Africa, one voice. So if that is so, I believe if we put our hands together, we can make Africa a better home for all individuals. I thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much indeed. Now I'd like to give the floor to Honorable Halidou Sanfou from Burkina Faso.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I First, I wish to congratulate you on the quality of this report when it comes to its form and substance. At the level of the form, I wish to extend my thanks to the Parliament and the Secretariat for submitting this report to us in due time. We received it before coming here. This information helps us, also all the information that is helping us to have a pleasant stay here. I wish to extend my thanks to the Pan-African Parliament, just like my predecessors, for the support given to Burkina Faso when we had those attacks on Café Istanbul. Also, the reaction of the Pan-African Parliament after the death of our president. The president of the Pan-African Parliament visited my country, and also many of my colleagues here present today sent messages of solidarity. All of this shows that Africa is in solidarity. We would like to thank you for this. We thank everyone here for these messages. I would like to invite the Pan-African Parliament to invest more effort in combating terrorism and violent extremism, which are affecting our continent, particularly in the Sahel region. We all know that when attacks are made, they actually jeopardize development. And I invite the Pan-African Parliament to be more committed in this struggle. The report indicates somewhere, in relation to capacity building, that a number of missions were made to Brussels. That's part of the capacity building of our MPs and staff members. I would like to know whether that type of training was open to all members or to a small number of members. I have the impression that this training was devoted to one group, but not to all members. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to give the floor to Honorable Representative from Africa, from Cape Verde, Felisberto Alves Vieira. You have the floor. Very good morning to Honorable President, honorable members of the Bureau, dear colleagues, members of the Pan-African Parliament. We would like, first of all, on behalf of Cape Verde, to commend the presentation of this report that comprehensively presents the actions carried out by the Parliament in the last few months, and which shows the growing performance of this Parliament and the growing prestige and trust of African institutions in our Parliament. This dynamic should be continued, and these objectives must be attained in the future with new actions, new proposals for the affirmation of our Parliament, so that it can soon move from a consultative body to a legislative body, a full legislative body. I would like to highlight three aspects. First of all, to highlight the Yaoundé conference. I believe that this was a very good decision, and we now are going through a period of modernization and expansion of national and continental, regional and local parliaments, opening them to the civil society and communities, what we call open parliaments. And the Yaoundé conference allowed us to show that this exercise, it's possible also with our parliament. And I take the opportunity to commend the Cameroonian authorities for the warm welcome and hospitality and perfect organization they availed, in addition to new knowledge, new friendship, and also new culture, specific culture of this great country, a friend of all of us, that is Cameroon. And I would like to, with your permission, suggest that we adopt as a principle that annually we dedicate in the plan of action of our parliaments the holding of conference in a roulement system so that we can continue discussing with the civil society, with the academia, with the NGOs, with the private sector, the best way to integrate Africa in its various domains: economic, social, cultural, knowledge, and new technologies. The second issue has to do with the current uncertainty about the post-Cotonou. We know that there is an agreement between Africa and the EU through the Cotonou Agreement, which will end in 2020. So the issue now is the post-Cotonou, the 2030. I think the Parliament should call to itself the important role of monitoring the negotiations that will take place between the African Union and the European Union, and to define the future model of cooperation between the African Union and the European Union in the perspective to safeguard the specific interests of African states, the members of the African Union. Lastly, Mr. President, I'd like to point out the issue of the relationship between our parliaments and the African Union bodies and organs. There is some discomfort in terms of the electoral observation missions, where oftentimes the parliament will indicate names of colleagues from various countries to be part of the missions, and these names are filtered out by the African Union. I think this is not correct. This does not give credibility to our parliament. Our parliament must have the autonomy to make its own decisions and implement those decisions, particularly in this domain of conflict management, monitoring of conflict situations in the continent, and in particular case, the electoral observation missions. Thank you. I would now like to give the floor to the Honorable Zalikatu Diallo from Guinea-Conakry.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wish to extend my thanks to the President for the quality report, for the quality of the report submitted, and for the presentation, and for all activities carried out between the two sessions. As a matter of fact, a great deal of progress has been made, and we hail such innovations and such developments. I wish to extend my thanks to the Ghanaian, to the links that are being established between the Pan-African Parliament and Ambassador Arekana, permanent representative of the African Union to the United Nations. And the outcomes are encouraging with the lifting of sanctions against Sudan. I hope that this tandem will continue. There are other problems with African countries to be addressed. I would like to hail also the efforts made to solve the issue, the question, to consider the question of Guinea. Guinea did not cooperate with regard to the repatriation of over 2,000 citizens who had a conflict with the American legislation in relation to visa. The other countries are facing the same problem. I would like to make the following contribution. We need to develop an inventory of all the problems we are having at the moment with the American administration. And we need to develop a common approach so that our countries cannot suffer from such issues. I think that the Pan-African Parliament made a number of gains, and we want these gains to be sustained. That's why I suggest we review the question of the Wi-Fi. Since our arrival, the Wi-Fi has not worked at all, and our gains should not be lost. Also, on the observation missions made by parliamentarians, there are many complaints, and we should deal with them. Decisions should be made to handle these issues. Thank you.
I'd now like to give the floor to Honourable colleague Kuku Agbo from Togo.
Thank you, Vice President. Honourable Marie Damatrice, who took the floor earlier, took on board my concern. But I would like to raise the issue once again because of its importance. She said that the Bureau made a number of activities that are not included in the report. Yesterday, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, in his moral report, talked about the mission the Bureau carried out in the United States and which led to the lifting of sanctions against Sudan, and the advocacy made by the Bureau for lifting restrictions on Chad. I think that these are important elements that deserve our attention. When we go back home, people usually ask us what we are about what we are doing in the Pan-African Parliament, and we can use such activities as an answer, and this will highlight the activities of the Pan-African Parliament. And it would be useful if PAP gave us a brief summary on how the PAP behaved and how that was considered. Thank you.
The floor to Honourable Mohamed Reza Kassem from Mauritius.
Before going to the substance of the report, I would like to just draw the attention of there is some mistake or shortcoming in the report. If we look at page 27 and item 4.5.1 of the English version, dealing with the visit to the European Parliament, you'll see that it is stated the following recommendations were given by the team, but there's no recommendation set out. Similarly, the next one, second visit made, again, the team participated in the study visit, wished to make the following recommendation, and there were no recommendation in the list. So if we could be circulated the list of the recommendation. So, Vice President, let me also join my voice with my colleagues to congratulate the Pan-African Parliament and the Bureau for its extensive lobbying, which led to the lifting of sanctions against Sudan. One thing that I would like to comment on the report is the lack of progress that is in the report relating to source of finance. All the committees, all the caucuses suffer from lack of finance, and we can't rely on the African Union for help. So I would like to have more clarity from the Honourable President as to what effort is being made by the Bureau, by the Parliament as a whole, to get a source of finance other than through the African Union. I would like also the President to enlighten us about the cooperation missions undertaken by the Parliament, by the Bureau, to strengthen the relationship between our Parliament with other Parliaments. as the honourable members know, under Rule 26, subsection 4 of the Rules of Procedure of Pan-African Parliament, it is the Committee of Cooperation, International Relations and Conflict Resolution who is supposed to deal with this matter, but I, being a rapporteur in this committee, can tell you that we haven't been conducted at all on any cooperation mission. Finally, I would like to also join voice with my colleague from Togo, which raised the issue of ratification of the protocol, of the PAP protocol, the Malabo protocol. I think that it is time for us to sit down and think why this protocol has not been ratified. What is preventing different countries from ratifying it? And then come up with suggestions, maybe amendments to the protocol which would make it more easy for different countries to ratify it. For example, we need legislative powers. These will be given to us by the protocol, but at the same time, I know that there's a resistance among many countries because there's a clause which says that if you are a member of parliament in your country, you will not be qualified to become a member of the Pan-African Parliament once this is ratified, that you need to have separate election to designate representative on this board. So I'd like, serious consideration to be put to setting up a committee. I know already under Rules 26(4)(c), the Committee on Cooperation and International Relations has this mandate to review, to examine protocols, but we would be grateful if the Bureau can come up with suggestions so that we can make propositions how to improve the protocol if that would lead to its ratification. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to give the floor to Honorable Mustafa Abdelaziz El-Jendi from Egypt.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice.
Thank you, Vice President. First of all, I wish to apologize for not being able to be here during the latest committee meetings because my daughter was ill, and I thank the group of the North and the members who expressed their sympathy. Thank you very much. That we are a family, and this is how a family should behave. Before talking about Sudan and Burundi, I wish to thank the Pan-African Parliament, the President and the Bureau, the Pan-African Parliament, which accepted to support Egypt in a very difficult moment indeed. At a time when we are fighting against terror and terrorism, and you took the decision to come to Sharm el-Sheikh to show your support to this Pan-African country in its struggle. Let me say that that changed many things. When Africa meets, the whole world follows. And that's the strength of the Pan-African Parliament in Sharm el-Sheikh. When we addressed the issue of the Sudan, this is a problem that lasted for 20 years. The Sudanese people were penalized for over 20 years. And now we are saying that the sanctions are lifted. Now, what about the people who suffered, the people who did not access to medication and drugs? These countries should be compensated for this, and we should stop massacring states. We cannot penalize people. We cannot kill children. We can find other means other than killing people. The same applies to Burundi, to the European Union. The European Union should understand that Africa rejects this. If you leave me alone today, you'll be alone tomorrow. So let's all work together. I do not want to repeat what was said. But there are questions that need to be addressed in relation to the ratification of the protocol. We need to know why countries do not want to ratify the protocol. Why don't they want the Pan-African Parliament to have legislative powers? These are basic rights. African people have the right to live in dignity. We must address these questions. We need to go back to our countries with answers to move on. Otherwise, we won't be able to move on. And otherwise, this will be a talking shop. We come here, we talk, and go back home. It is important to meet and talk. But it is also equally important for the Pan-African Parliament to have legislative powers, to become a real parliament. This is the work of the President, the Vice President, and the work of each one of us in our respective countries. And we should come back later with answers to the question of why we have not ratified yet. We have the African Union is financed by the Europeans and the Americans up to 80% of its budget. And we need to understand why orders are given. Mr. President, dear brothers and sisters, today terrorism is taking place all over the world. But in Africa, how many young people and how many children are killed by suicide bomb attackers? What can we do together? Al-Azhar in Egypt is ready to come to Africa to talk about Islam. Islam, the religion of love. Islam that believes in Jesus Christ, in Abraham. And so Muslims do not have the right to kill. Today, in Egypt, we are fighting, and our army is ready to work with all the armies of African countries to train them, to work together. At the end, I thank the President, the Bureau, the committee chairpersons for the work done. I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues said. I thank you, Mr. President. I thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank you.
The floor now to Honorable Chief for Chirumbira from Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I address you as a president because where I come from, whoever sits in that chair becomes, for that moment, is addressed as president and not as vice. So I'll address you as president because of where you are sitting. May I congratulate the Bureau, led by the President, for a very good and comprehensive report, and also congratulate the Pan-African Parliament for the successes that we have scored as a parliament, led by the Bureau, and mainly in respect of the lifting of sanctions on Sudan. I think this is great news. It raises the profile of PAP. It makes us be known and become visible. We cry for visibility, but the only way we become visible are the results that we achieve. Not to ask people to know us when we are not achieving anything. So this is great for the Parliament. I would want to associate myself with the suggestion made by Honorable Mohamed Reza of Mauritius, that, Mr. President, we need to review our advocate strategy for the ratification of the protocol. I think we need to reflect. We've spent a lot of money on this advocacy business. We've been everywhere on the continent, in every regional meetings, everything. But we are still on 5. I think it's 5 out of 28, I believe. It means the strategies have not been effective. And I agree that let's go back, let's have a debate on the possible apprehensions. Some countries are not happy with some aspects of that protocol. That is a reality and we have to accept it. And let's be honorable enough and say, why don't you amend this and to take everybody on board? Some countries will never sign because some of the burden that is placed upon them because of the protocol is unacceptable. For example, Mr. President, you will notice in this room, in this chamber, on the second day of sitting, we rarely have such low numbers. If you look at this room, it's like we are in the second week. On Thursday, we are about 2 days to go. But we are just starting. It's a reflection of something. Some countries cannot afford this time around even to bring their delegations. On what if now we say we should be here and stay here for, I don't know, whatever period, maybe 6 months. If countries can't afford 2 weeks, how can they afford 3 months? So we need to be realistic and take everybody on board. Mr. President, what has become, how far have we gone with the autonomous electoral observer mission? We need a more detailed explanation. Mr. President, I'm interested and happy that we are signing a lot of memoranda with a lot of organizations. It may be good to reflect on this and sometimes go back to them. How are we doing on all this? I see in the report, Mr. President, that for the 2018 budget, the allowances for members have been removed. That's what I read in the report. So it will just be given, it's more of a dessert, a starter for 2017. We've been given something, but I want to go to the main course next year, it's being withdrawn. I think we need an explanation, Mr. President. What has gone wrong? Why are they withdrawing? And lastly, the whole arrangement of the report, I think whether it's a secretariat who prepare the report, can they structure it it's an activity report, but the focus should not be on activities only, it should be also on the results. We have been told we are now using the approach, performance-based approach in PAP. The report should tell us not on workshops, only on meetings. Meetings are not the objective. The objective is some results. So can we have a framework of a report that talks of activities and what have been the outcomes of those activities? Thank you very much.
Tenho o prazer.
I have the honor to give the floor to our colleague, Honorable Sekou Fantimade Traoré from Mali.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. I initially thought I had been forgotten from the list, but firstly, let me welcome and congratulate the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament and the Secretariat. Because following the discussions, we've seen there's a lot of criticism, but today we have to recognize that since 29 September, we've received the consolidated report of the President. This is a very important innovation that we would like to congratulate you for. I would like to talk about the Maputo Protocol. I said that this protocol was problematic, like other colleagues have also said here, because all the efforts made by the President throughout the 5 regions spending so much time, and we see we only have 5 ratifications. The speaker rectifies. He's talking about the Malabo Protocol. That shows you that this revised protocol is indeed causing a lot of problems. And we have to know that it is not the MPs, but it will be people nominated by the executive that we're talking about. And if you look at the report of the president, when they travel to the United States to visit the American Congress, we don't talk about the executive. These are elected members that come together to talk about the problems of the people. What does this show us? We, as members of parliament, we should be able to make an amendment. It should be possible. And the 29th summit was the ideal opportunity for the president and his delegation to raise this issue so that Africa can move forward. And the participation of the PAP delegation in election observer missions, that is another issue. I said transparency, that's good. I congratulate the chairperson of West African Caucus and the Bureau. They have carried out an activity to enable those who've never been on these observer missions to have that opportunity. And now it is taking its course. No one went for mission twice or thrice. So if caucuses work together in transparency, there's no problem. But there's also another issue. I think that these election observer missions, we are aggrieved as members of parliament. Our grievance is that we have to travel economy class, while the others travel in business class. So we cannot understand that. We have in our midst very senior MPs, people who have been prime ministers, who've been at the helm of regions, governors. So we are members of parliament, elected members, and that is something. Therefore, the African Union needs to understand that. If we look at the hierarchy, the parliament is the second institution after the presidency. So MPs have great legitimacy, and we should be considered according to our rank. And the mission we've conducted to the European Union, I was part of that mission. And you know, the parliament played a major role. We have raised this issue to the European Union, the issue of criticizing us for our poorly organized organizations. But for your part, do you also hold good elections? Africa has never participated in election observer missions in Europe. But the day after, they said, well, in the German elections, the ACP would be present. That means that the Pan-African Parliament is also playing a major role. But many people think that we are just here to rubber stamp, thinking that, well, we're just repeating what we hear from the heads of state, but we do not have to follow that lead. And finally, turning to our strategic plan, that is what it is about. This is also a major issue. When we draft our strategic plan, we need to assess the period 2014-2017, what was done, what was not done. But we should not only rely on the Secretariat. It is our strategic plan. It is our tool as MPs. It is our planning tool. So before we complete this process, a certain number of MPs, it might be the chairs of the caucuses, should come together and take stock of what was done and also analyze what wasn't done so that we can defend ourselves better and prepare for the upcoming period, 2018, 2020. And who are working on this, they are specialists, technicians, but we are also capable of contributing to prepare this strategic plan. And as MPs, we should be fully involved in the process to come out with a good strategic plan. Thank you, Honorable Vice President.
Merci. Chamo o distinto colega Abdelahad.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. The activity report is indeed very comprehensive, and this honors the Secretariat of PAP and the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament. Nevertheless, I expected that the report would reflect more figures. We have a lot of words. We have some 30 pages, 32 pages, but we don't have a lot of figures. I think the budget deserves more attention. Maybe the budget will be presented by the Committee on Finance and also dealt with by CAPA, but in this activity report, I think we need more figures. Two issues drew my attention. Page 28 in the French version, paragraph 2, that's point 4.2. The financial report, page 25 in English version. The execution rate, 15 September 2017, stands at 59.63%. And before that, we mentioned the reasons for this. Execution rate was low because of the positions not filled and the delay of recruited staff reporting for duty. And we also learn that the contracted staff amounts to 95%. So I don't know, that doesn't quite tally. It's quite contradictory in the figures. And then further on, when we talk about COP23, I think there's an error. COP23 should take place in Germany in November, not in October, November 2017. That needs to be corrected. Thank you.
A palavra distinta colega.
Our honorable colleague Mamoipone Emily Senawane from Lesotho.
She's not here. Gloriosa Nimenya.
Honorable Gloriosa Nimenya from Burundi.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, for giving me the floor. I would also like to start by thanking the President of the Pan-African Parliament and his Bureau for their commitment to make these achievements possible. Mr. President, I would also like to thank you for the efforts made to plead the cause of the African people, in particular to lift sanctions against Sudan. And I take this opportunity to ask you in this chamber that we also ask for the lifting of sanctions against the Burundian people. They are suffering. And as you know, Mr. President, when the European Union or the United Nations take decisions against the country, it just deepens the suffering of the people. That's what's the case in Burundi. Main theme is harnessing the demographic dividend through investments in the youth. That is our theme. So how can we invest in the youth when the youth, especially the young people in Burundi, are suffering greatly? Because all our development projects are compromised due to the economic sanctions imposed against us. Among the guests of honor yesterday, someone said that the sanctions or the decisions taken by the United Nations or Europeans are taken without knowing what the situation is like on the ground. Mr. President, let us remind you that in 2015, 2016, a fact-finding mission was sent to Burundi by the Pan-African Parliament. There was a report that was even tabled in plenary following that mission. And last year, during the May session, the report on peace and security indicated that there was a clear improvement in the situation in Burundi. So how can we still justify these sanctions taken against the people of Burundi? Mr. President, I beg you to stand in solidarity with us, and I take this opportunity to thank all our brothers and sisters from Africa who have supported Burundi, also at the United Nations. And may our colleagues here extend our thanks to their countries. Thank you, Honorable President.
A palavra distinta colega.
I give the floor.
Now, Aminata Niang from Mauritania. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. Allow me first to thank the President of PAP for this very enlightening report. And then let me congratulate the Bureau for all the major achievements made during this period. Vice President, as we all know, and some of my colleagues have pointed this out, we have come to the end of the period covered by our strategic plan 2014-2017, and we are starting to plan for 2018-2023. And we would have liked to have a general assessment of the status of implementation of the 2014-2017 strategic plan. What was indeed achieved and what was not achieved. I would also, Honorable Vice President, add my voice to those of my colleagues to say that the coming into force of the Malabo Protocol is critical to enable our institution to fully play its role. And whatever the activities that we might undertake, whatever missions or conference we participate in, if this protocol is not ratified, we will have failed in our mission. It is therefore high time, as some of my colleagues have already said, that we devise a strategy to bring our countries to ratify this protocol so that we can fully play our rightful role. And finally, I would like to talk about the Women's Caucus of the Pan-African Parliament. This Women's Caucus have a key role to play in advocating for the ratification of the Malabo Protocol, but also in the implementation of all the legal instruments relating to women's rights. And this caucus, nevertheless, has limited means to implement its action plan. So I take this opportunity to draw the attention of the Bureau to the importance to support and revitalize the Women's Caucus of the Pan-African Parliament so that we can fully play our role in this Parliament. I thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much. I would now to call the Honorable El Haj Diao Kante from Guinea-Conakry. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. Let me start by congratulating our leadership of the Pan-African Parliament for having presented this report, and thank you for having listened to the criticism last time and heeded our call to send this report to the members of Parliament before we come to this room. Although I only received the report when I came to Midrand, but I was informed that by email this report was already sent, so we congratulate you for that effort. Allow me also to congratulate the leadership for the large number of activities undertaken, 153 days. And that shows that you did not rest during this period at all. And others have said before me, it is easy to say what we should have done when we know what was done. So apart from congratulations, we also have some remarks and pointing out some shortcomings that we need to address. Firstly, I have read the report in point 2.3, we talk about 11 committees of our Pan-African Parliament. But if you count them, you see only 9 committees are actually mentioned. And you look at the Committee on Cooperation, which is not mentioned. Well, it's a very important committee that should not be neglected. And if you look at the activities reported on the committees, we list the Committee on Cooperation and 9 other committees. So there's still 1 committee missing. This needs to be revised so that we know exactly what committees we are talking about. This being said, there's a second problem. The financial report is only reflected on 1.5 pages, but a financial report is very important. It is the precondition for us to conduct our activities. So I wonder when we will have the opportunity to talk about this operational budget of the Pan-African Parliament, because we only mentioned this very briefly. We want to know what we have, the amount that we've obtained, the amount requested, but we know how we're managing these funds, and we have to understand why some activities did not occur and others were able to be conducted. Then there's also a very important problem. Everyone talks about the election observer missions. Yes, it is part of the Pan-African Parliament's mandate, but the most important mandate that was neglected, that is disappearing, is conflict management on the African continent. Mr. President, apart from the Pan-African Parliament, there is no organ that can manage conflict and try to resolve these conflicts without them spiraling out of control. And other members of Parliament can attest to this. We've conducted fact-finding missions, looked at conflicts, and there's no state where there's no problem between opposition and the ruling parties. It's not the countries themselves who can resolve the problem. It's only the Pan-African Parliament that can resolve this. So our Parliament should review its mission as conflict prevention. I think there's no other organ apart from the African Parliament that can ensure this. Honorable Vice President, we have an action plan. We've adopted an action plan. We also have another orientation plan, but the activities conducted was not compared with what we plan to do. So we wonder whether this action plan can clearly reflect what was indeed undertaken. So I would like to know how, based on what was planned, what was indeed achieved. So if we plan within our committees, each committee has a work plan, activities to conduct. And some of these activities afterwards were not compared to what was initially planned to do. So maybe we are moving forward without really following our plans. So I think we should have a report that compares what was done with what we planned to do initially. And I hope this will be done in future. It will be good that we can clearly take stock of what was achieved. And lastly, many of our colleagues mentioned the Malabo Protocol. Now, I think if we don't pay attention, this problem could get out of hand. You remember that at the beginning, when this parliament was created, we thought of an African government. That was even said in this room when we've advocated for this, but because many heads of state were not in agreement with us, there's no one supporting this plan, and the plan has fallen by the wayside. We should be very careful that the same doesn't happen with the Malabo Protocol. Some people say, well, why are the states not ratifying? Well, if we have a genuine African parliament that make decisions that are enforceable, well, some of our heads of state will not be happy with this. So this is where the rub lies. And I stand to be corrected by the Committee on Justice. We should look at this issue of an amendment or a draft text requesting member states to approve and ratify the Malabo Amendment. This will be handed out to each delegation, and we should come back with a signed document. And this document will have the value of a ratification of this amendment. But if this have to go between our states and Addis Ababa and Midrand, we risk waiting too long. So I suggest that we draft a document, that the document be sent to all the parliaments, as the speakers of the parliament are working very closely with us, and we work closely with the secretariat, and send this amendment, and that it be signed, that this document come back, and this can serve the value of the ratification of the Malabo Amendment, and then that amendment will come into force. That is my suggestion.
A palavra, colega
Honorable Sidia Jatta from the Gambia, you have the floor.
President, I think the President and the Bureau deserve commendation for such a report. It's concise, but it's full of data, very important data. I'll just take some of the data and comment on them. One, the Conference of Speakers, particularly conference which took place here under the auspices of Pan-African Parliament, was an important forum because it provided occasion to strengthen commonalities and mitigate differences. I think we have a task. Such fora are going to be very helpful in bringing about integration and finally the unity that we are all seeking for. It will be necessary one day for us to put together all the experiences that we have, the different parliamentary experiences that we have, and out of it we create something that will stamp with our Africanness. This is that we parliamentarians will have to solve. Another issue, and I don't know whether he is gone, the executive director of NEPAD. You talked about the transport sector in Africa and its challenges. NEPAD has been doing a lot of infrastructural development in terms of roads on the continent, but transport is a nightmare on our continent. And unless and until we improve communication in terms of transport on the continent, trade among nations is going to be very difficult. You are talking about protocol and their ratification. There is one protocol which has been ratified over 30 years ago by ECOWAS, and it is still not implemented. You raise the issue of, you raise questions about trade, customs, and immigration. ECOWAS protocol on movement of persons, goods, and services was ratified over 30 years ago. But trade among us is still a problem. And I have seen cases in countries, in my own country, and in other countries, where citizens of ECOWAS space are arrested for not having a particular card, which is not in conformity with the protocol. Because once the protocol was ratified and the grace period was over 30 years now, it means that every citizen in ECOWAS space is a citizen of all the countries in ECOWAS framework. It means that I can go to Guinea and work there as if I was born there. Nobody should ask me about my identity card and so on. I could go to Nigeria and work there as if I was born in Nigeria and there was no issue. But this is not the case, even though the protocol has been ratified over 30 years ago. So it is not just enough to ratify protocols, but their implementation is fundamental. Protocols are made to be implemented, not just to be ratified and shelved. But this is the general practice on the continent. So many protocols have been ratified, but they are shelved. They are not implemented at all. So these are issues that we parliamentarians can also tackle. Because we all come from countries where there are parliaments, we are members of parliament, of course. We can raise questions to the executive. Why is it that this particular protocol is not brought to parliament for ratification? We can follow them up. That is a job that we can do as parliamentarians when we go home. Mr. President, there is also a talk about empowerment of women in terms of access to land. We know that traditionally in Africa, women don't own land. But the tragedy is that over 80% of land in Africa, which is tilled, is cultivated by women. And therefore, the fact must be established that land belongs to he who cultivates it. Since women are the producers, why is it that women cannot have access to land as they want in order to be able to produce whatever they want to produce? And we, again, as parliamentarians, we can play a role. We can legislate, sensitize and legislate and make sure that the law made is implemented in the interest not only of women, but of our countries, because there must be production for there to be economic development. So this is also a job that we parliamentarians can do. And then, of course, one of the most important themes in the report is harnessing the demographic dividend by investing in the youth. About 60% of the population of my country are youth. If you don't invest in such people, it means that the country does not have a future. We invest in them by educating them. We invest in them by training them, giving them skills, empowering them with skills to be able to assume responsibilities of managing the affairs of the country. They are the people of tomorrow. The youth are like a sun at 9 o'clock or 10 in the morning, full of vigor and vitality. Without them, we cannot move. So it is fundamentally important that we invest in our youth in order to be able to move our continent forward. This is absolutely necessary. And this Maputo protocol that everybody is talking about, I think it is time we stopped talking about this particular protocol. I think it is time we took action. It is time we took action at the level of our countries which have not ratified the protocol. Subject the executive to questioning why the protocol has not been brought to our different legislatures for ratification. That's the only way we can get it done. It is not enough for us to talk about them here. We can also deal with them practically when we go home. I promise that when I go back to the Gambia, my delegation, we will make sure that if it is not right, but Gambia has ratified it. We have ratified it. For us, there is no problem. I think others will also assume the responsibility of making sure that their executives bring the protocol to their parliaments for ratification. That's the practical thing that we can do. Mr. President, there is so much to talk about, but I don't want to monopolize the time. I want to give time to other people to speak. But before I finish, I must pay my homage and respect to Honorable Kante. Honorable Kante was the president of the Committee on International Relations Conflict Resolution. It was the most active committee here when I was here. There was no conflict anywhere on Africa where his committee has not gone to deal with it. And they have done so productively. They have helped to solve problems before they become unmanageable, as he put it. I'm very happy that he is back again. This man is full of experiences as far as international relations are concerned. He has done a monumental work here as president of the International Committee on Conflict Resolution and International Relations. I am happy that he is once again among us to share his many experiences in the domain of international relations. Thank you very much, Mr.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you. I would like to ask for your indulgence. If we could be direct, objective, in order to save some time. We could reserve some time so that His Excellency, the President, can answer all the questions raised. I now also going to suggest that the maximum intervention of 3 minutes per delegate, per MP, beg your pardon. I now give to Professor Oginga Latigo Odamida from Uganda.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I would like to start by congratulating our colleagues who joined us in the Pan-African Parliament. I would also like to congratulate the President and the various organs of PAP that put together this report. I would also like to convey the apology of our country. The President of PAP was supposed to come to Uganda. Unfortunately, our President had an emergency and that visit was cancelled. We apologize for that inconvenience. Having said that, I come from an academic background where procedures are very important. And I'd like to start by making my first objection to the chair allowing people to talk at will and then subjecting others to time limitation. That is not fair. If you know that there are going to be 50 people speaking, you allot them 5 minutes or 3 minutes so that each person deals with his or her time the way he or she wishes. Secondly, I've looked at this report. And in Uganda, I was at one time leader of the opposition. And every start of our parliament, the president would make a State of the Nation address. They do that in other countries. And in that State of the Nation address, the president touches on key things. I would like to suggest that other than a purely technical report that can help us in debating a statement from our president, the president comes and makes a statement that reflects the aspiration of PAP, the direction it is going, the challenges we are likely to face. It would be more useful to debate it than getting a report that would suggest like you are accounting for the time that you have spent. Lastly, the Malabo Protocol is a problem. And we have to find a way of dealing with it. It will not be the president and the Bureau to move to countries to convince them to sign. Because there are countries that would sign, like the presidents of our countries signed this protocol, because they have not spent enough time thinking about it. And then when it comes to implementation, we get challenges. I would suggest that PAP arranges a session where those who originated this protocol
I now give the floor to Charles Majakalia from South Sudan.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me this chance. Mr. President, we have to congratulate ourselves for the success of having removed sanctions against Sudan. The sanctions that lasted for over 20-something years and for which people of Sudan experienced a lot of sufferings. Whilst Sudan comes out of the sanctions, South Sudan is being looted, Mr. President. For the last 3 years, the UN Security Council have been wrangling over sanctions against South Sudan. Thanks to Russia and China veto with support of 2 African countries to veto that sanctions, which are economic and military embargo. We will add to the suffering of people of South Sudan. Just because of reports that go and which, in our opinion, are not just, but manipulate for the interests of those who like them to appear so. The same is true of Burundi, where the member from that country has just talked. What I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, prevention is better than cure. You have seen how long it has lasted with Sudan, the sanctions. And one of the speakers was talking, the sanctions are out, and people of Sudan have remained with wounds. Is that what African countries will have to experience? Let us not look at such events as if they are occurring to individual countries. We should see them with solidarity, as we have done recently with Sudan. And so I stand to say here that why I said we are being lured, recently targeted sanctions, according to them, have been leveled on senior military officers and a minister, to whom we feel that sanctions are unjustified. Because when we look to them, what have they done? Nothing at all. It is that they have failed to sanction South
I now give the floor Honorable Kaltum Abdekarim Suleiman of Sudan.
Good morning. In the name of Allah, may His prayers be upon His Prophet. I would like, first of all, to congratulate Mr. President for giving me this opportunity to make my statement. I am from Sudan, the country that was affected by the unjust blockade and embargo. So I would like to thank you on behalf of the African and the Sudanese women for the cooperation of the Pan-African Parliament in order to lift this embargo and blockade which we have suffered from for over 20 years. And I hope that that we will stand all together and that we will have one voice and one say within PAP. And I would like also to congratulate the Bureau for this very clear report, which has reflected the proceedings and the activities that have taken place the period that was referred to in 2017. Would like to add my voice also to those who have spoken about the issue of the observation missions. And I would like to say a few words on I would like to also to refer to the issue of youth. We must absolutely invest in the youth through education and through attaching them more importance and creating the necessary jobs for them in order to put an end to migration, which has affected the lives of our youth. If we could do that, then we would render the great service to our continent, because the youth is the pillar of this African nation. Thank you.
Tem a palavra o distinto colega Tabu.
I now give the floor to Tabu Joseph Sofonia from Lesotho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the session. Allow me also to extend my thanks and gratitude to all those who have contributed to the elaboration of this report in its new format. It is true that it is quite consistent and it is of good quality, and also this also applies to the structure. The only blame that I have on the drafting is about some activities, and particularly the missions that have been carried out by Pan-African parliamentarians and those that have been carried out by the President. They have only been listed, as it has been noted by some other colleagues, without mentioning the conclusions and the results, while we know that there have been some results. Probably there were no conclusions for some other activities for the first time. The work of the caucus is mentioned within this activity report. And we held a meeting of the Northern Caucus yesterday on several issues, and I must tell you that there was a very heated debate, but still a very fruitful and positive meeting. Several issues were touched upon. And among others, the position, that is the position at the structural and functional level of the North African Caucus, and despite its limited composition compared to other regions, and here I mean representativity, and I was mandated last May here to raise this problem of representativity of the regional caucus within the Bureau and within the committees. And I was told that we must submit a written proposal to the Rules Committee, which I did, and we're still waiting for a conclusion, a reply on this issue. Among others, we have spoken about the rotation of the presidency of PAP. We have also spoken about some maybe unpleasant issues, the membership of Morocco to the African Union, the Sahrawi issue, and we have talked at length in a constructive manner. Now I'll move to the issue of this famous protocol. We cannot really understand. Everybody agrees that on the need of ratifying it, and even recently, the clerks of national parliaments and senates have made a commitment. There is a decision from the Executive Council of the African Union. Can I proceed? Can I proceed, Mr. Chairman? No? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we all agree on the need. 1 minute. I will conclude on this issue, Mr. Chairman, although I still have 2 other items. I was saying that the Executive Council, which is made up of foreign affairs of member states of the African Union, and which invites the Pan-African Parliament together with the Commission to come up with a solution, that is, which prevent member states from ratifying this protocol. So if there has been an identification of these problems or these obstacles, which obstacles? And it is the Executive Council is asking us to identify the problems, the obstacles. So I think there is a fundamental problem there. Could we know, Mr. President of the Pan-African Parliament, have you identified the obstacles? Has there any joint work that has been carried out together with the Commission of the African Union to identify these problems? Have you ever felt these problems during your advocacy missions in member countries? Shall I proceed, Mr. Chairman, or shall I end it here? Shall I conclude? You can carry on. You can proceed. I would like to mention, as concerns the report, an important contradiction as concerns the rotation of the presidency of PAP. On the one hand, we are defending very fiercely the protocol. We're fighting for the protocol of for the new protocol, and we are trying our best in order for it to be ratified. And we are favorable. We support its content. Support because it mentions rotation. So why do we have to speak again and again about rotation? This is again, and this contradiction should be removed. On the one hand, we're talking about we're supporting protocol, and we're still raising this problem of rotation. What is mentioned in the report? A resolution was adopted. Distinguished colleague, could you please conclude in order for us to give the floor to other colleagues? Thank you.
Honorable Mohamed Musa of Sahari is not here. I now give the floor David Ernest Silinde from Tanzania.
First Vice President for giving me the floor in order to contribute as regards this report of different activities of PAP. And the first issue that I would like to talk about, so our problem is Africans is not to talk, is just to put things to actions. And I'm saying this because we look like were so similar in all African countries. We are talking too much instead of implementing. So so we most of the time it's like we have got hidden agenda. That's why we don't succeed in most of the issues. So, Mr. Chairman, there are some of the issues that we said we have to get a position on how to sign, to ratify the Malabo Protocol. Every year when we come here, you are talking about the same stories. And now we have got only 5 countries who have signed, and then that's why we need almost like maybe 20 years so that we can sign or ratify this protocol. So the second issue that we have insisted, and so you should show the good example for all the vice presidents. All your countries have not signed. You should show a good example. So leadership is an example. So the second issue, people are refusing to ratify because they have got some reasons. I think there's something very heavy which is missing. They don't see the importance of the PAP. So well, it's like the issue of ICC, because they can just take to trial, because they are afraid that it can be like ICC. So I think this issue should be dealt with. So if I talk about the issue of committees, we talked about rotation, and the president said that the issue will be dealt with the Committee of Rules and Privilege of the African Union to see how we can deal with the rotation. But if you go through this report, this issue is not there. And what are you hiding by the? So you just put, we should be transparent. The issue, the easy things are shown in the report. So you have traveled, you went there, you came back. We need a real content of in this report.
Honorable Nico Shivambu.
Vice President, I'm not going to talk for a very long time. I just want to emphasize on the point which my colleague, my neighbor here, has spoken about on the urgency of having to ratify the revised protocol of the Pan-African Parliament. I think that perhaps we should agree in principle that all people who are going to avail themselves for leadership of the Pan-African Parliament at the bureau level should come from countries that have signed the revised protocol as a basic point, so that there is some sense of incentive for those who do. And we can even say that the committee chairs as well. So if you want to be part of the leadership of the Pan-African Parliament, you must be coming from a country that has signed the revised protocol. Yes. Because there seem to be no motion, we are motionless. Like since this leadership has been elected, not even one additional country has signed the revised protocol. And I don't know why we are called a parliament without legislative powers. They are saying Sierra Leone, but it's only one. Why are we called a parliament if we do not have legislative powers? It's like a person who has never been inside a car, is a pedestrian permanently, and then he says, my job is to be a driver. Because we're not passing any law. We do not have any legislative powers and functions. And we call ourselves a parliament. A definition of a parliament is that it's a legislative body. We're just a forum. Maybe it must be called the Pan-African Forum until we have signed the revised protocol that gives us the legislative powers. I want to propose as well, President, that perhaps the next ordinary session should be about each and every country reporting on how far are they with the process of ratification of the revised protocol of the Pan-African Parliament. So delegations from all countries must give a truthful report that in our country, this is what we have done in the efforts to make sure that the revised protocol is ratified, so that we constitute a parliament that is going to have legislative functions. That is what I wanted to talk about, and only that. The other issues we'll deal with at a different stage. Thank you very much.
Outros níveis. Thank you, Honorable Nico Shivambu, for the time that you have used. I now give the floor Fidel Ruingamba of Rwanda.
On my turn, let me thank the President for the clear and concise report. I also wish to sincerely salute the efforts that the Bureau and the Secretariat are putting in improving the running of PAP. These are visible to everybody's eye. I want to commend especially what the improvements made in security. Members, we shouldn't forget what it was like before. Security has improved a lot. At one time, we had reached a point of fearing to come here. But now, things have improved at the hotels, at the airport, to and fro. So we salute the efforts put by the Bureau, and also we thank the South African government. I want to talk about the services rendered here in PAP. Sometimes when there is a service to be rendered, be it financial or medical or something like that, there is a tendency for members to rush to the offices of the Secretariat. And that tendency, of course, is justified sometimes, but it makes us look funny. In those narrow, very narrow corridors, you meet members asking themselves, asking each other where the office is, where the service is being rendered, looking like lost sheep. And actually, it's not, doesn't look dignified or organized. 2 years ago, Mr. President, when we were getting these passports that we have, AU passports, the guy who was dishing them out was distributing them as if it is a very rare commodity which is in short supply. And people were jostling and shoving and pushing and jumping lines. I hope that this time round, when they are given again, it won't happen. We should try to streamline things. Maybe assign time for different countries or different regions, but not, call people all at a time and, they look like I don't know what. Just one point.
Meio minuto.
Okay.
Half a minute, please. Eu gostaria de felicitar a Conferência de Yaoundé, da forma como ela foi muito bem organizada. Pela primeira vez no PAP, recebemos uma carta de convite, um programa bem elaborado, e quando lá chegámos, nós tínhamos pessoas de apoio que, portanto, deram os recursos e que nós pudemos escutá-los com atenção. Este é o tipo de conferências que nós queremos, e eu que desejaria que o Papa organizasse mais conferências como ela. Eu não poderia terminar sem dizer isso. Muito obrigado. I now give the floor to Honorable Suleiman Cissé of Sierra Leone.
I want to start my intervention by thanking the Bureau, the President, the Clerk, for the part they played, the prompt action they took in trying to save my life I fell ill on the 2nd when I got here. They rushed me to the hospital, and the entire staff, the clerk, everybody was on deck, helped me out. Thank God, I'm okay now. Mr. President, that tells you that we should have faith in PAP. They will be there for you in times of need. I've seen it. I saw it in action. Mr. President, on behalf of the President of Sierra Leone, Dr. Anders Bai Koroma, he sends his greetings and thanking PAP for PAP's intervention in the recent tragedy we had in Sierra Leone, the mudslides. PAP gave contributions, I think it's over $100,000 to help out the victims of the flood. We applaud PAP for that, and that tells you that PAP is a Kumra, PAP is a mother, PAP can be there when you need it. Having said that, Mr. President, I thank you for the part you played in lifting the sanctions against Sudan. But you still have more work to do. 15 years, Zimbabwe had sanctions. Burundi and others, they have sanctions. The question that I ask is, why can't we give sanctions against the US? It's only the US that is giving us sanctions. Why? Because we are like a toothless bulldog. We just talk, and nothing being done. Talk, and nothing being done, Mr. President, because we depend on them for handouts. Why can't we have our own money? Why can't we have our own resources? So I listened to the speech of the king yesterday when he's talking about Africa. The only thing, it was a good speech. The only mistake he did was to interfere in the internal affairs of a member country. That wasn't good, but his speech was a good one. Mr. President, the question of Sarawari is still lying down there. Morocco, I don't think Morocco has an identity. Morocco wanted to be members of the European Union. They turned them down. Now they came back to the we should try and encourage Morocco.
May me note to half minute, please.
We should try to encourage Morocco to grant independence to the Sahrawi people. I thank you.
The floor to Honorable Mamadi Sidibe from Mali.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Mr. President. I congratulate the President for his dynamism. The report talks about what has been done, and I have some comments to make. I find that the report is not analytical. It is much more of a narrative, static report that talks about what was done. As indicated by the Honorable from Uganda, we need to have a vision with regard to the undertaken activities. We need to understand the strength and the weakness of our activities. At the level of form, page 2, for instance, actually, it's page 3. There is a reference to a number of activities. This should have been highlighted, and this would have made the presentation clearer. In page 6, we only find a listing of the committees that produced reports. We could have said that over 11 committees, 9 submitted their reports, and we should explain why the other committees did not submit their reports. So I suggest that in the future we have an analytic report, and that report includes recommendations. As a chair of the caucus, and as indicated by my colleague, I would like to refer to the shortcomings in terms of operations. We talked about this to the President, but it is useful to talk about it in the plenary to have some anticipation. We notice that at the level of the committees, there is duplication. Some committees need to be made more active. We need to take the necessary measures to avoid having one single country with two members in the same committee. In the West African Caucus, the decision was unanimous, and we decided not to have two members of the same country, and we will check this. As regards my comments, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. There is a discrimination. Others talked longer than us. Here we are talking here in the name of our caucus, and I ask for more time so that we can handle the issues at hand. So I'm not speaking on my behalf as a parliamentarian. I'm speaking on behalf of my caucus.
Donc, au niveau des observations, il faut que les personnes...
The people who are sent should be respected. At the level of our caucus. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Asmin Osman from Sudan.
شكرا أخي الرئيس وأنا أيضا.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to appeal to the Chairman to allow me to congratulate the African peoples on the occasion of the decision made by PAP in terms of the tremendous efforts made to lift the sanctions against Sudan. I thank all those who contributed to this so that the suffering of our people could end. I also thank I also want to express my support for every country that is suffering from sanctions without any justification. We know that the aim is to destroy people and to exploit countries. We need to work together so that we can liberate Africa from these sanctions, these unjustified sanctions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, for all these achievements. As we discuss the activity report, let me say that tremendous efforts have been made, such as the meeting of the ambassadors accredited in South Africa, the discussion of the various issues, contacts with regional parliaments and universities, such as the links we have with the University of Santiago and the work we did with Professor Santiago. I can also refer to election observations. And I believe that our report is full of activities. Our comments are meant simply to improve the quality of our work. Mr. President, I think that the Committee on Human Rights and the Committee on International Relations need to be further supported, so that we can reduce the suffering of our people on the continent. We believe also that young people and women can play an important role in this regard. Mr. President, our budget should have more support from these committees, and we need to consider this as a priority. I believe
Distinguished Honorable Cornel Badounou from Benin, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor. I wish to lend my voice to my predecessors to congratulate and thank the President and all his team which participated in the preparation of the report. This is a very good quality report. It is precise. It did not refer to all the elements in the period covered. However, let me share with you this concern. This concern was actually voiced by my predecessors, and that is the ratification of the Maputo Protocol, the Malabo Protocol. Malabo, not Maputo, says the gentleman. I want to understand why this protocol has not been ratified by all countries. Countries talk about this concern, but we are still left with the same concern. How can we have a parliament that does not have legislative powers? I do not understand this. My colleague from South Africa said the same thing. If we cannot legislate, there is no need for us to be here. We should be able to make decisions so that our countries can ratify this protocol. I thank my country, which is one of the few countries that ratified this protocol. My colleague from Guinea-Conakry talked about some solutions. It would be good if we followed those solutions so that all countries can ratify the protocol. And we should enjoy our full powers, our full legislative powers. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Honorable colleagues, I would like to share with you a brief information. It's now 20 to midday. And after the announcement of the first list, I received 11 more requests from colleagues. So we have 28 members waiting to address the audience. Let's be objective. Colleague Monjir Raoud from Tunisia, you have the floor. The floor. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to comment on two issues. The first issue was raised by my predecessors, and that is the Malabo Protocol. To this day, we have 5 ratifications. To have the possibility of having more ratifications and to give the possibility for our institution to become a legislative body, we need to have a road map. I believe that we should have a deadline with clear identified mechanisms that should enable us to work on this. I consider that there are a number of issues that need to be discussed in depth and in a serious manner. These are related to our legislative powers. We also need to consider the financial, administrative issues, the question of immunity, allowances, and the questions relating to secondment. These issues need to be considered in depth and in a serious manner. We need to produce solutions and submit them to our heads of state and government. To do so, we need to have a plan, we need to have the vision for a legislative body, and we need to have a road map. We need to start by preparing a number of model laws. These should be prepared and submitted to the African Union and heads of state. We have good quality parliamentarians who enjoy a high level of expertise in human rights, economics, infrastructure, agriculture, and other areas. We can suggest model laws on human rights, on questions relating to women and women's empowerment. We also need to consider also the suffering of our people. The more we move in the direction of this transformation into a legislative body, the more we work on this, the more we'll be able to make further steps forward. When this institution becomes a legislative body, it will be a leader. It will be the driving engine for socio-economic and political development on our continent. On the second question, I have a very precise question. What have we done about rotation?
Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to Honorable Tekle Tesema Baramo from Ethiopia. You have the floor.
Vice President, I'd also like to thank the President, the Bureau, and the...
Peço perdão.
I do apologize. I said Madam Colleague, but it is a gentleman. Thank you.
I would like to thank the President, the Bureau, for the very progressive and brief report that we have got. And I would like to also to congratulate for doing a flagship activity like lifting of the sanction on Sudan. Having taken that, in the previous time also I raised the issue of the activity report. The report is very important, very brief and consistent, but the report must be evaluated on the basis of set goals, set targets, and set plans. But whereas in this report, there is no the goal set, the plan, and the set targets. So for the future, it must be arranged in this way. When we are reporting the report, it must incorporate these ones. And the second, the report must include the challenges that we have faced. Regarding the challenge, there must be the solutions that the way the PAP took to solve this challenge. So this must be included in the report. I think it's better to know the main challenges that we have been facing in our endeavor. And the third, regarding the Committee on Cooperation and International Relations, PAP did a very important things in relation to the external organization relations and AU and so on and so forth. But in our protocol, the mandate is given for this committee. I don't know the role of this committee in this regard. And the second thing that in this committee there are more than 30 members. That is out of the rule. Why this can be out of the protocol, I don't know. The Bureau must discuss on this one. And why I'm saying this is we have to do institutionally, not by the individuals or by the groups. When we come to the institutional base, we can do by the committee, by the Bureau, and so on. So that this must be understood. In relation to the protocol,
the floor now to Honorable Jantu Traore from Guinea-Conakry.
Parece não estar na sala.
It seems she's not in the chamber. I'd like to invite Honorable Cynthia Morrison from Ghana to take the floor.
Mr. President, I'm speaking in connection with the AU passports that we have. I believe that there are certain countries that we still find difficulty using these passports. And as members here, I believe that we are all diplomats and therefore we have diplomatic passports. I don't know about other countries. So my advice is that we should rather let our countries issue it to our citizens who will travel in the African countries, rather than issuing it to we, the parliamentarians, who already have the privilege of traveling to any African countries without any problems. If we let our country, our citizens have these passports, then we would know that we have one Africa with one voice. Also, when we come here to PAP, every time we arrive, we are given new accreditation. Yesterday, for instance, we queued for almost like an hour in that cold weather, waiting to be accredited into this house. There are people who continue coming. I believe that we can get a list of those who are yet to report again. And those people who devise a means, maybe swipe your card and enter, rather than giving us new cards every time that we arrive here. It is waste of money and waste of time in that cold weather. If you can find a device, I think it will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Cynthia. The floor now to Honorable Sid Hamed Mugeya from Mauritania.
Assalamu alaikum.
Mr. President, I would like to thank the President and PAP for this report. I suggest that the resolutions referred in the report should be annexed to it. I believe that the Pan-African Parliament won a victory following the lifting of sanctions against Sudan. Information has to be disseminated. Many people wonder what is the role of PAP. Now we know that PAP can make victories. Following the lifting of the sanctions against Sudan, which has been suffering from the sanctions, which suffered from the sanctions for 20 years. There is a lack of activity on two important sectors. First of all, health. Health is the guarantee for development. In this session, we had a meeting with UNAIDS, and we made a commitment to that organization. But the activities of PAP are very few in the area of health, which we believe is a priority. We are still facing the problems of AIDS and tuberculosis, malaria, and similar diseases. The continent cannot develop if we do not pay more attention to health. The Pan-African Parliament should carry out the advocacy work to fund health in our continent. The second issue is education. We need to promote the economy of knowledge. If we do not invest in education and human resources, if we do not open our universities to Africans, to other African universities, we are not going to move forward. I think that it is not normal to continue seeking knowledge in Europe, knowing that we have many African universities that can teach African students. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ibrahim Hassan from Niger, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for giving me the floor. I thank PAP President and his team for this relentless effort and the quality of the report. My concerns were addressed by the previous speakers. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for the understanding. The floor now to Honorable Mohammed Montaka from Ghana.
Mr. President, let me say that a number of good things have been said about the report. I want to emphasize on the things that we can do to improve this report. Let me start by saying that the timing that we get these copies is bad. It's still very bad. A number of concerns have been raised, but it's continued to be very bad. We have members' emails, and this report we all know will be here months ago, and this can be emailed to members so that to make it easier for us to be able to thoroughly go through the report and be able to make meaningful contribution. I still hope that the Bureau will improve this, because the timing for the reports are always bad. You get them in the morning and you have to be reading through whilst you are listening to contribution. Secondly, very important, Mr. President, the strategic plan that we had from 2014 to 2017 is ending in December. This report, like Professor Ojinga from Uganda and Honorable Chief Chirimbura said, it has to follow a plan. You see, we have done so much, and there are a number of good things that we have in the report. But what is it following? If you cannot measure, you cannot achieve. We need to be able to match it to what we really want to do. And we need to be able to know in a year, the things that we have said we want to do, how much of it have we been able to do in the report? For example, October will be the last session that we have before the close of 2017. I hope that before we go home, we are going to have the opportunity to interrogate the strategic plan to see how much of it have we been able to achieve. For us, we are now planning to have another from 2018 to 2023. Having said this, Mr. President, if you look at the comments coming from most of members, one of the major concerns has to do with these missions. And Mr. President, with the greatest of respect, I want to suggest to you, let us in the report that you present in sessions have the list of all members who have traveled and the countries that they have traveled as a way of improving transparency. Because if you are able to improve transparency, what it's going to do is that this murmuring, talking behind the corners about missions will be over. But the way it is, if we had attended 29 missions, it means that over 100 of members who have traveled. I mean, I must admit, I've had the privilege of being invited to attend a mission, but because of busy schedule home or meeting other important obligations, I've not been able to. But if you hear the comment, I think you need to do much to be able to improve the transparency issues. Mr. President, one other very important thing that I want to raise. Yes, Sudan, we are lucky and we are grateful, and PAP had been able to take initiatives and the sanction on Sudan is over. I'm very proud to be part of the team that went to Washington. But colleagues, let's stop pretending. Let us not pretend. Let us not come here and pretend as if we are delegates coming to represent our presidents. Let us see ourselves as people representing the African people once we are in PAP. Who amongst us will pretend that he doesn't know that there's a problem in Burundi? Who amongst us will pretend that he doesn't know that there's a problem in South Sudan?
We see our people being refugees across borders. They are dying. Is it because they are not our children? Is it because we are not involved? Let us not pretend. The sanction, yes, I say it's wrong for sanctions to be placed on the whole country. But targeting the sanctions, we have to start ourselves. AU must be responsible to be able to target the leaders who are maltreating their people. We must refuse them to put their assets in our countries. We must refuse them to educate their children in our countries. Let them remain in those countries to educate their children. Let them put their assets in the very country they are destroying. Let us not pretend to say that the sanctions are unjust. Yes, unilaterally on the whole country is unjust. But on the individuals who have made it their business to constantly change their constitution as if it is their private enterprise, it is right for them to be sanctioned. Because what they are doing, they are destroying all of us. I want to add that PAP, if PAP will have to be responsible, we need to begin putting up the same delegation that we put to go to Washington to visit the AU chairperson, visit the president who becomes the African leader for the year, visit the sub-regions, be able to articulate the issues with the individual country presidents about the concerns of human rights and abuse of the other people, so that when we go to talk at the UN or we go to talk at the US or European Union, it will be just and fair. Because what we are doing is to just wait when people abuse people, then now we wear our nice guns and our nice coat to go pleading that those sanctions should be lifted. Let us work to ensure, like my colleague from South Sudan said, prevention is better than cures, to make sure that the activities that necessitate the sanctions do not even occur, not alone for the sanction to come and then PAP put a committee to go and beg again. One senator told us, well, we will listen to you, but if you are not careful, you come here again, because the other things that are happening in other parts of Africa and your leaders in Africa are pretending not to see, you yourselves are not working hard towards it. We will put the sanction and you come back here begging. I don't think I want to go begging again. Let us do the right things to prevent the sanction from being put, so that Africa will continue to be better than what we do, and we always complain when we ourselves are doing nothing. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I would like to call our colleague Dagno Konne.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. Thank you for giving me the floor. As the Honorable from Rwanda rightly said, we have to commend the security services of the host country, South Africa, for the new measures taken to ensure our protection. We would also like to thank the Bureau for having worked to achieve this. Then I would also like to congratulate the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament for the new drive given to our August Assembly, and in particular for the major progress made. Every day we see the Pan-African Parliament improving. I don't want to come back to all what was achieved. Our other colleagues mentioned this at length. The MP from Mali, Sidibe, already mentioned the recurring issue of overlapping in the permanent committees. Our rules of procedure clearly stipulate that no country can have more than 2 members in the same committee. Unfortunately, we are forced to admit that this is a practice that has unfortunately become the rule. Let me take the example of my committee on agriculture. There are 3 countries that have more than 2 members each in our committee. That means there are some committees that have more than 30 members, and there are other committees that are only made of 10 members. Mr. President, an institution is strong and respected only if the institution itself respects the rules it freely adopted. Why should we wonder that for years agreements have been ratified but they are not implemented? Why are we struggling to have the Malabo Protocol ratified? We should not be surprised. Honorable President, let us implement our rules of procedure and enforce it so that this cannot compromise our unity in Africa. Thank you.
Convido agora a distinta colega.
I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Jamil Debechen from Tunisia, please. You have the floor.
Here.
The Honorable Alaji Darbo from the Gambia.
Very much, the Vice Chair. When the wise men and women speak before you, you are almost speechless because great men and women think alike. Notwithstanding that, sanction on Sudan being lifted, I also join my colleagues to commend PAP for the role it played. However, I also concurred with the previous speakers that we should not only cry foul if the angel slap us from the sky, and we only cry foul when the angel slap us from the ground. In this case, what I'm trying to say here is that we should not only express concern when there is injustice meted on our sister countries in Africa from foreign countries or outside Africa, but yet still will not feel concerned if we are expressing the same injustice within us against ourselves. I concur with the previous speakers who earlier on alluded that we should look at ourselves in our countries and appeal to our leaders to do justice to ourselves. It's very important. As we are concerned on America against Sudan, we should equally be concerned on ourselves, against ourselves in our own countries. On resolutions, very good resolutions were formulated. It is one thing to have resolutions, and it's another to see the resolution being implemented. I will look forward to PAP to see that the resolutions that were formulated are implemented, and I will try to find out how far they are trying to measure the success or the process leading to the implementation of those resolutions. In particular, the resolution on the rotation of the presidency on PAP presidency, yes, somebody said it could be country to the it will be country to the protocol, but again it has been mentioned that we need to resolve it is resolved that the rules be amended accordingly so that there can be rotation. I think if that is done, there will not be any contradiction. It is good to have report explicitly
A palavra ao distinto colega.
I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Nourenu Achade from Benin.
Estando na sala, dou a palavra ao colega Aurélio Zingas.
The Honorable Aurélien Zingas from the Central African Republic.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. I think that what I wanted to say was already covered by my colleague from Egypt and also my colleague from Mali. Nevertheless, I have a slight concern which might have significant consequences. Mr. President, our continent, with the return of Morocco, we are made up of 55 countries, and they are represented here by the flags that we see in front of us. And you yourself, Honorable President, try to count those flags. Do we have 55 flags here? Doesn't look like it. Because my country's flag, the Central African Republic, doesn't have its flag here. And this issue has been raised time and time again, and we have not seen any improvement. I have to raise this issue in plenary so that before the end of the session, my country can also be represented as the other countries with their flag flying in the chamber. We don't see the point of being here. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. A palavra.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Said Brahim Said from the Sahrawi Republic. You have the floor. Not present in the room. The Honorable Haidara Aishata Sise from Mali.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. Thank you, dear colleagues. Let me start by congratulating the Secretariat, the Bureau, and the President in particular for all these achievements, especially for having succeeded in having the sanctions against Sudan lifted. But still, on this issue of sanctions, I would like the Pan-African Parliament to go even further. What do I mean by this? Today, there are countries that are withdrawing from the ICC. But we also need to address the issue of the functioning of the ICC. I don't think it's the ICC as such that should be questioned, but its functioning. We have the right to investigate and give our opinion about this because we are members of parliament. We are not the executive. We should not be afraid to address things and give our opinion. That is what I think. And we really have to address this issue of the ICC, which is of the utmost importance. Mr. President, turning now to the issue of ratification. It was mentioned by everyone. And I think that my colleague and Minata Nyang rightly said that the Women's Caucus was ready to assist. And it's not the first time that we are saying this. I've said it in the past. We've proposed the caucus to conduct a mission in the various countries. We say that women want, God wants. Well, there are many things that men cannot achieve that women can achieve. And therefore, if we give the women the possibility to conduct missions in all countries, we will come back with the ratification from all countries, God willing. So, Mr. President and members of parliament, I hope you heard my call. Another issue is related to the sanctions imposed against our countries. For Chad, I think everyone agrees that this was unfair. Also, Guinea, it's unfair. And we have to be steadfast, adopt a clear position against this. In a document, I read that the senators are also requesting sanctions against the citizens of the DRC. This is even more serious. These are our colleagues. We have to talk to these people. If we have problems there, we have to resolve these issues. The time for interference is over. If it's a matter of money, well, no. They have colonized us. They've stolen our money, but they've looted our money. We must tell the truth now. So once and for all, we must really steadfast and make a decision so that this interference stops. And I'm fully in agreement with the Youth Association that is raising a complaint against Nicolas Sarkozy. If Africa is suffering, it's because of President Sarkozy. Mr. President, we have to shoulder our responsibilities in terms of ratification. And once again, we as a member of parliament have the responsibility. I beg you 1 minute. If each member of parliament can together talk to their respective countries, the ministers of foreign affairs in their countries, we will achieve results. We've taken this decision long ago. We should not hide behind the truth. We really have to face the facts. We've signed, so now we should ratify. Thank you.
I'd like to give the floor to the Honorable Chen Chenhamo Chimutengwende from Zimbabwe.
Mr. President, we must note that there are many reasons why most countries are reluctant to ratify the Malabo Protocol. Some of the most important ones are as follows. 1, PAP has no department or section or committee for the research, promotion, and campaign for Pan-Africanism and Agenda 2063, which are accepted by the African Union as our guiding instruments. 2, PAP has not have a continuous debate, exposure, and permanent campaign against the illicit financial flows from Africa, as highlighted in the report presented to PAP by former President Thabo Mbeki. As long as the massive looting and pillage of African resources is allowed to continue, there will be no development or eradication of extreme poverty in Africa. These are only some of the campaigns PAP can carry out to make itself relevant to the aspirations of our continent. Rotation is a policy of the African Union. If PAP is dilly-dallying about putting it into practice, how can PAP be taken seriously? We should move away from turning PAP into a mere talk shop and an extravagant tourist organization. PAP will continue to be marginalized, and the Malabo Protocol will not be ratified. PAP has to change its direction and amend the Malabo Protocol. Thank you.
A palavra ao colega Cláudio.
The Honorable Claude Kamanda from Sierra Leone.
On behalf of the President and people of Sierra Leone, on behalf of the delegation to PAP, I want to join Honorable Cisse to thank PAP for the immense contribution towards the tragedy we had on August 14. Mr. President, I want to title this report as the scorecard for President Nkodo Dang Era, the new paramount chief of PAP. Mr. President, honorable members, the achievement within the report as follows: adoption of the 9 resolutions in May session, clerks and speakers conference in which commitment to ratify the new PAP protocol was made, the Yaoundé conference on AU's legal instruments on political and social economic integration that was critically reviewed, ambassador's successful meeting on PAP's activities, bilateral missions to various countries to advocate for the ratification of the revised PAP protocol, USA mission to advocate for the removal of sanctions on Sudan, mission on resources though not reported in details, bilateral partnership with the European Parliament, which has led to capacity building training for MPs and staff, security that have been improved, and linkages. To this, I want to congratulate Mr. President and team. However, I have 3 concerns. One is on the Youth Caucus. Mr. President, honorable members, this year's theme is harnessing the demographic dividend through investment in the youth. Mr. President, honorable members, on 2.2.7 that talks about the youth or reported on the Youth Caucus, nothing has been reported on the activities for the roadmap on the actualization of this theme. This is because nothing has been done. It is really a shame as an entity. We need to prepare the minds of our youth in Africa. PAP needs to support the Youth Caucus in order to see its relevance. Youth Caucus is as important as any other body within PAP. Secondly, Mr. President, honorable members, the motion on rotation 2.2.2 reported on the debate here in the chamber, and 5.1.8 the resolution that was outlined or agreed upon, and that says that we need to amend the rules of protocols to in accordance with Rule 93, so that the issue of rotation will be addressed. And take into consideration, Mr. President, honorable members, Rule 17B and I, in tandem with Rule 18. I wish to know why the presentation and debate of the amended rule of protocol to take the consideration the issue of the rotation is not on the activity or the program for this session. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, honorable members, is the issue on the electoral observation mission. PAP jointly with the AU mission issued a press release on the credibility of Kenya's election on 8 August. This PAP and AU was overturned by the Kenya Supreme Court. What is PAP AU position on Kenya? Kenya is sitting on the explosive time bomb What is PAP AU waiting on? That tool, we need to know. Thank you very much.
Our colleague, the Honorable Janet Kabila from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You have the floor, madam.
Honorable First Vice President, I would like to thank you for giving me the floor. And I would like to congratulate the President, the Bureau, and all the members for the achievements and improvement in the management and initiatives taken for our institution. Honorable President, I have 3 concerns. Let me refer to when I spoke in May 2016, when I made the following proposal to add an item in the report on the status of implementation and the establishment of the implementation of all the resolutions taken and recommendations made. That would enable us, Honorable President, to assess the level of achievement and the implementation of our resolutions and the obstacles encountered in that implementation. So what are the specific issues and progress made on resolutions taken in October 2016? There was a resolution establishing focal points and the designation by the Bureau of members making up those. Then secondly, establishing within the PAP focal points in charge of women's issues in all the structures of the PAP. That's the Bureau, the caucuses, and the Commission and Secretariat, the committees and Secretariat. Then third, recommendations, the member states to initiate as part of the official reform program of the UN to establish a parliamentary assembly of the United Nations. What have we done on this, Honorable President? As information, this recommendation was made based on a resolution taken by the Pan-African Parliament on 24 October 2016. That's a year ago. Then, Honorable President, there's also the decision of the Executive Council of the African Union pertaining to several resolutions that need to be included in the report. My second concern, Honorable President, concerns fundraising, an issue already raised by those who spoke before me. Honorable President, I note that the greatest effort for mobilizing funds focus on our traditional partners, that is the European Union. 1 minute, please. International organizations and so forth. Therefore, I would like to suggest to the Bureau to take into account the businesses in Africa, private sector, in order to mobilize funds. Honorable President, and I conclude with this. There is a concern concerning our working documents. I would like to congratulate our Secretariat for having sent the documents well before coming to the session. For example, this report that we are discussing right now. I would like to request whether the same could be done for all the reports of the permanent committees to enable us to read and make substantive contributions during the debate. I thank you for your attention.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Madam. I would like to announce the additional list. Please, I would like you to understand that we regard this as closed. Wadwaziz Mzote, Sandosh Kalyan, Mohammed Hussein, Abdruzak Nandish, Faisal Tibin, Presiderati Tinidi, Lúcia Maria Consulau dos Passos, Hélio de Jesus Pina Sanches, Mastan Ulasham, Mustafa Amutsuvi Capadeu, Ernesto Butibil, Ferxi Okoto Ogong. These are the new members on the list, and please, I would like you to accept that these are the last people to be colleagues to be able to speak. You have the word, the floor, Abibi.
For giving me the floor. I would also like to thank Mr. President for the report that he has brought before the Parliament today. Let me start my remarks with this, that listing sanctions against Sudan was a remarkable achievement for both Pan-African Parliament and Sudan. And a special thanks to those behind that effort, and congratulations to Sudan. And Mr. Vice President, I recommend that all countries on sanctions should be sympathized and supported, because we are all Africans and we are here for the interests of the continent and our member states and our people. And Mr. President, I would like to talk about the agreement that we had with the Department of the Political Affairs at the African Union about election observer missions. It's about 40% representation that members of Pan-African Parliament should have. But when we are nominating as a chair of one of the caucuses, when we are doing our nominations, and even sometimes when we are part of these missions, we don't notice that. We don't notice that. Members from the civil societies, ambassadors, and electoral commissioners are more than 60% which they are supposed to have. So I want to know who is going to do that follow-up. Do we have a body here or an office here who's supposed to make sure that that 40% representation is fulfilled, which is very important, Mr. President. The other thing that I would like to talk about is we caucuses, regional caucuses here at Pan-African Parliament, our activities are very limited, Mr. President. And yesterday in my caucus, we had a very hot issue regarding these activities. We need more activities. We have a 2-hour meeting, 70 members of Pan-African parliaments, 14 or 13 countries, 2 hours. Is that reasonable, honorable members? We need to create activities for these regional caucuses, Mr. President, because we have our own issues that are really touching our countries and our regions. We have a plan of environmental issues. We have a plan of security-related issues. As I can see now, my time is finishing. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Obrigado pela compreensão. A palavra.
Thank you for understanding. Our colleague Santos Vinita.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I'd like to appreciate the report. It was quite detailed, and I'd like to also say to my colleagues, this report was received on the 4th of October. You've had 6 days to read it. And to come here today and to say you only got it today, I think is really not fair on the administration. Mr. President, I would like to address the letterhead on that report. The letterhead on that report doesn't only have the logo of the Pan-African Parliament, it has a whole host of insignia. all your sponsors. Now, I think when a document goes out in the name of the Pan-African Parliament, there should not be any advertising on it. This is a formal document to members of Parliament. Secondly, with regard to the training for members to the EU, I would like to ask you, Mr. President, I'd like to ask you, how are the members selected for this particular training? Is it done by committees or is it done on a regional basis? You have heard, Mr. President, the challenges of the protocol that is facing many of the parliaments. I think it is incumbent upon you to now take some action, and I would like to move that you set up an ad hoc committee to analyze the challenges that are facing the protocol, to possibly look at remedies and solutions, and if there needs to be recommendations to revise the revised protocol, that we should act on that. Lastly, I would like to ask a question. Why was the activity report on the Rules Committee not included? I know that it has been submitted timeously. I would like to know if it was deliberate because the information around the rotation is very sensitive, or whether, sir, it was a genuine oversight. I thank you.
Palavra ao colega.
I now give to Mohammed Qatar.
I thank you, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah. May peace be upon you. I would like to add my voice to my respected colleagues in order to express our appreciation to the President of Parliament who, for his efforts, which is Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would like to add my voice to my respectable colleagues for their appreciation to the President and also to members of Parliament, which was reflected here in this report, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the people and the Parliament of Sudan, I would like to extend to you and to all members of PAP for our sincere thanks for the significant effort which was crowned by the lifting of sanctions on Sudan. We'd like to commend the decision that was taken by PAP in October 2016 on the necessity to lift the American sanctions on Sudan. We would like to commend the President of Parliament in following up the implementation of the other paragraph of this decision, and also for having negotiations with the Congress and with the State Department of America in order to lift these sanctions, which was followed by the decision to lift these sanctions. Sudan would like to be acknowledgeable and grateful to you for this effort, which was crowned by the lifting of sanctions, and would like also to request the members of this Parliament to convey our thanks and gratitude to the respective parliaments, and would like also request the Pan-African Parliament to continue its effort in order for the name of Sudan to be removed from that list which was set up by the United States. Long live Pan-African Parliament, one voice. Thank you very much for your listening.
Honorable for Nigeria.
I want to say that the President and his Bureau have done creditably well. We need to commend you for that. However, there are two issues I want to draw your attention to. Firstly, Mr. President, I was among the delegation that went to the U.S., the first set, and I'm happy that we'll be able to achieve what we said to achieve. But I want to tell you, Mr. President, that we have more issues in Africa that need intervention. This time around, we were not required to go to America. We are just required to go to a neighboring country here, and with cost or less, and its problems will be solved. Let me give an example, Mr. President. The potential crisis, even in your country, in Cameroon, we have an issue. Very soon, people are calling for secession. The Southern Cameroon are looking for independence. This is an issue. We can go there and intervene. If you come to my country, Nigeria, Nigerians are talking about restructuring, that the country has to be restructured. And that is a potential issue that the president of the country said, look, he required the legislature as a body to intervene. We are thinking of amending our constitution to carry people along. These are potential areas. Look at what happened in the Ugandan parliament. These are also potential crises. Look at what happened in Kenya. For a Supreme Court judge to issue that kind of judgment, sometimes we need to make a statement to support certain issues. But our voices are not heard, even when our leaders do the right thing or when they do the bad thing. So we need to play a very serious role. You issue a statement because the difference between a dictatorial government or a military and a democracy is the presence of the legislature. So if we as a legislative body in this continent and something is happening good in some other countries, you need to talk and your voice should be heard. Lastly, Mr. President, I want to draw your attention to a small issue. Our MPs in PAP are not given their due respect. I'm telling you, and this you need to look at it very seriously. Just like my colleague from Ghana said, we were queuing up here for registration. And there is no difference between an MP, a support staff, and any other visitor to this very place. And while we were there queuing up, one of the staff just came and arrogantly said, where is the special guest? Any special guest here? So that they can accredit us, not even MPs. Special guests are here to address MPs. And therefore, it should concern you that we should be seated. And therefore, each time we come, we are not given the special attention that we have been given. I think there is need for you to talk to your staff to realize that this is very important. And finally, Mr. President, we need to revive the publicity department of the Pan-African Parliament. We should be in the news all the time. For the good reasons, we should be there. We are having a session.
zal تبين فرمت النسية.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, we would like to welcome the Bureau of PAP and our colleagues. We are discussing the report of the Pan-African Parliament on its activities from May to October 2017. And the main or the salient points that have been referred to, although these points have not been debated, is the lifting of the sanctions on Sudan. And this is a historic achievement that has been achieved by this PAP. And it is necessary. And it was necessary to be a good startup for PAP in order to serve the interests of the African peoples. The United States of America didn't lift its embargo on Sudan because it likes the Sudanese or it likes the government or it respects the governments in the continent of Africa. The